Hello. It's been a few days since Storm Dara ripped through this area, and I thought we could have a bit of a look at some of the damage that has been done, including buildings where the sides have just been ripped off them. So this barn was actually used for storing old furniture and all sorts of bits and pieces, and the wind has lifted the roof up and pushed the side out, and as you can now see, it's a mess. These old stables, which I would really like to be taken down, they weren't touched. they kind of look like they're falling apart, but no, they have stayed intact. So the bit there is lifted up, that's come across the top as off, which is ripped back. Can you see it just swinging? It's ripped the roof off the back of the barn there. That's swinging up there. We can't go out until after the wind drops down. The roof of the barn has lost a panel here. The panel in the middle there has been folded back and is all bent, needs replacing. So basically all of this side needs sorting out, because otherwise this bit of stable, which actually we use for the sheep to give birth in, so the lambing happens here. Well, that's just open to the sky and it's not going to be any protection whatsoever, so we desperately need to get that fixed. The fence here is flat on the floor, that's all come down, so that's not looking great. But some good news is my greenhouse is still intact, no panes of glass missing or broken, that's all completely fine. Here in the barn where the ducks get kept when they have to be shut in for the winter, so that's the duck house there. Well, we don't have any ducks at the moment, but we still have the barn. But unfortunately the roof is damaged here, so that needs replacing. The field shelter, well, the wind actually picked that up and moved it. Oh, it's a 12 foot by 10 foot building and the winds must have been so strong, but anyway, they've picked them up and moved it. You can see the front is smashed in. The sides are all warped and come away, but worse than that is it's actually gone through our neighbour's fence, so that's going to need fixing and sorting. And the shelter, there was like just a wind shelter next to it, well, that's just in bits on the floor, even bits over in the neighbours. But yeah, this poor old field shelter, not actually that old. We put the front on it when we first moved here to make it into a duck space. Ducks are very ably going to demonstrate how they can go in and out. It's not bedtime. They're going to go in anyway, we'll just wait for them. Ironically, I had said to Mr. J last week, let's take the front off that because I could use those panels elsewhere. Maybe we could use them to expand the chicken run. Well, nature has now taken them pretty much off there. They don't actually look too damaged, so we may still be able to use them yet. However, this is a really heavy field shelter and it needs moving back to well, I don't think it's going to survive being moved back, but it needs moving because it's just sitting over our boundary line. But kind of almost worse than that for me is that it's now left a gap here that rabbits can get through. So this area, which I spent so long putting up rabbit netting, they can now get in. Now, the polytunnel, at the moment, I haven't done a proper inspection of it, but that looks intact, it looks undamaged. I think the only thing that might have moved would be the door frames on it, because they're made out of wood and not cemented into the ground. So oh well, fingers crossed, I'll look at that at a later moment. And then there's a few bits of the fencing that have just come undone. Well, you know, they can be fixed fairly easily. In the forest garden, the food forest, you know, everything looks pretty okay. There's a few plants that look like they've been blown sideways a bit, but you know, they'll pick up. The rose arch looks intact. I'm actually amazed how much looks okay here, and how resilient these plants are to, you know, given that the wind moved that field shelter, must have come through here at a fair old rate of knots, but there is some damage down here. Just behind me here is our wildlife pond, which I've got willow around the outside. It's like a woven willow hedge, but unfortunately over here a really big tree that filled that space has come down. It's kind of landed in amongst the willow, but worse than that, it's come down on the fence there, breaking the fence, and now rabbits can get in at this end as well, and I really don't know where to start dealing with this. Here's that same tree from the other side. It is massive, so it's about, I don't want to exaggerate, so maybe it's about 20 feet across in the canopy, and the trunks that have come down are maybe 18 inches, and I would guess nearer the base they're probably more like 2 feet or more across. So if we can get this chopped up into into firewood, it will be great firewood at some point, and all the smaller branches here could be chipped, and we could use them as wood chippings, and that would be fantastic. But as you can imagine, every tree surgeon, every workman in the area are busy dealing with issues for other people, and so I got onto our insurance company and said, what do we do? Do we just get quotes, which is going to be difficult at the moment because they're so busy? Do we just get it done? And they said, well, unfortunately your insurance doesn't cover you for fences that have been damaged by impact from a storm, and it doesn't cover you for your field shelter because that hasn't got a concrete base. It's only for permanent buildings. And now I've had a really good look at the pole barn. Possibly that hasn't got a concrete base either. So maybe we're not, I have a feeling we're not insured for any of this damage. And right now I feel so stressed by what feels like the enormity of what we need to do by ourselves in winter when I'm not feeling great anyway. Mr. J is at his busiest work time. It just feels overwhelming. It actually, I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to deal with it, and it might be that I will just have to go indoors and put the kettle on and ignore it for another month or two until the SAD has lifted and life doesn't feel quite so difficult and awkward, and when I don't feel quite so skint, because you know we don't have lots of money to get all these things fixed. They're all small bits and pieces, but they're all bits that you know we can't do ourselves, so we're going to have to get help in. And that's all just really daunting. There actually doesn't seem to be much damage to anything really in the veg garden. You know, some of the taller plants are leaning over fairly drastically, but I can't see, you know, the roses aren't snapped off, and the tall brassicas are not actually snapped, they're just leaning. You can probably hear my neighbours have got chainsaws going to try and cut down some of the trees that, or chop up some of the trees that came down in their property. And I think for a few weeks that's kind of how it's going to be here. We're just going to hear chainsaws and chippers as people are clearing up the damage from Storm Dara. Because all the negative that I feel, I want to find some positive, and that is that my Brussels sprouts are ready. So I'm going to harvest a few of those to take down and have with our supper tonight.